Hello, everyone. We're back. Welcome back to the Five Tier Football Podcast. This will become regular. I am going to start doing clips for you all to make it a more viewable content as well. But I will also make sure that the podcasts are available on other streaming platforms if you want to listen to it in full, Spotify, all that, etc. And as always, I'm joined by the man, the myth, Brandon. How are you, my friend?
I'm all right, mate. Just recovered from a crippling chest infection. I think it was safe
Ooh.
to say. Had a few days off work in the uni, but we're all good again. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Funnily enough, I had a few days off working all with an ear infection. So,
There you go
we're
then.
both sharing on us, but I'm back at work again tomorrow, 4 a.m. start, yeah, me. Um,
Oh
and
my.
yeah, though, there we go. um, but yeah, anyway, so we've got an interesting episode for you today. We are going to try and make these episodes regular, definitely one a week minimum, but if we can produce more, because there's so much to talk about at the moment, then we will. So we'll start off with it might as well just be the first 15, 20 minutes might as well just be a Tottenham Hotspur podcast. Obviously we've got a bit about the Premier League, which is all Spurs based, would be great for Spurs fans. And then we'll talk about the Championship briefly. As always, we'll talk about our own teams a little bit as well, because we love to, and that's Blues and Derby. We'll also talk about Shop being sacked from Barnsley. We'll talk about Cardiff and their sort of managerial situation and whether Steve Morrison should be given a chance at the role. And possibly a little touch on League One as well if we've got time, but we'll see. Without further ado, let's get straight into things. Brandon, I just want raw thought right now. What was your feeling when you saw that Nuno had been sacked?
I'll be honest, I'm not surprised. I don't know if that's kind of the feeling around many people, but you might recall, I don't know if this is on video anywhere, but at the start of the season, I thought this was a good appointment, I'll be honest, just because of what he'd been doing at Wolves. And I thought it was probably a deserved step up, to be fair. But don't get me wrong, he had money backing at Wolves, even in the Championship. But I thought it was deserved. But yeah, you know what it is. I'm a big one for giving managers time, but this one, when it comes to manager sackings, you're always looking for signs. Like, fair enough, the results aren't coming, but is are the things going right? And it just felt like, especially from watching them, nothing felt like it was ever going right. And even the transfers at the start of the season, some of them were like even questionable. Didn't spring much confidence into me. So you got Emerson coming in from, I think it was Spain.
I think it was Barcelona, Emerson Royale came
Yeah,
from.
something like that, wasn't it? And that I don't know the fee behind that, but apparently that Brian Gill's coming for like 20 million and Eric Lamella. And I thought Lamella was, well, that's an untrusted kind of source coming from. He's never played in the Premier League before. You know, Lamella can do a half decent job at least. And that Romero apparently is coming for 47 million. So I don't know. It's weird that especially with the Kane situation as well. Something don't seem right there, did it? So
No.
I'm not surprised by the decision at all. They obviously don't see um, a clear path where Nunes kind of building season upon season, any kind of building blocks or anything don't seem to be falling into place. So I think I'm not shocked by it personally, but I don't know how you feel. So
Um, I think shocked would be the wrong word. I'm not surprised, because although don't get me wrong, I don't think all the blame is on Nuno. I think Daniel Levy is the biggest problem that Spurs have in general. Um, because although there might be some things he does well, like build you a nice new stadium, he's not the best with managers, etc., transfers, all that jazz. And he's just a little bit toxic at times, and I do think that's one of their biggest problems at the moment. But Dan Levy ain't going anywhere anytime soon. Let's be honest. So with Nuno, like I wasn't surprised because it felt like he's going to get sacked soon. Do I think it was completely unfair and out of order? Yes. Um, because imagine having 72 days at a job. Yes, the transfers weren't great. I thought Romero was the only promising one, but the amount they've paid for him isn't pretty. Emerson Royale has shown glimpses, but that's only when the whole team are playing well. He's not really an individual you can rely on. And then Gill has just been awful, to be honest. Whenever I have watched him, he's been hard to watch at times. Spurs fans, if you disagree with me, let me know. Please prove me wrong. I'm all for it because why not? But no, overall, the transfers weren't great, but I do think he's had no time at all. He's gone from winning Premier League Manager of the Month to getting 4 losses in a row and being sacked for it. Bearing in mind that 3 of those losses were against Chelsea, Arsenal, and Man United. Granted, Arsenal and Man United haven't had spectacular seasons, but they're still big sides. The Crystal Palace one is probably the one you could argue, but then they lost that after a sending off. That tends to be the case with a lot of football matches. So I feel like when you put it all into perspective, if a manager in the Championship was sacked for a run like that, I feel like everyone would be like, what? Why? You know, I just quickly on Shop, to be honest, before we talk more about it later, the bloke didn't win a game in 13 games, and most of those they lost. That's what it takes to sack a manager. I get that it's Spurs, but right now they're sat 8th and they're 3 points off 5th. They could quite easily climb that table again. I just feel like on paper it wasn't enough, but from the outside looking in, it sort of feels like the players forced him out. I don't know whether you get that vibe at all.
Yeah, it didn't look like they were. Sorry, it didn't look like they were playing for him at some point. Like I remember watching the United game. Palace game's a little bit different, but who else have they played recently? Arsenal as well. It didn't. It doesn't feel like they were playing for him. Kane isn't. I don't know whether that's down to what happened in the summer, obviously with his transfer saga. But fair enough, Mourinho didn't get the best out of Dele Alli, but you didn't even see any glimpses really from Dele Alli that something was that he was going to get back to anything like his former self. And even players like Skip, who I had really good hype for after coming off that season with Norwich. I don't know whether it's something to do with the play style, but he looked a bit out of his depth, and I think he's good enough to play in that team. What surprised me the most though was that if you look at the way that he played at Wolves, you know, kind of the 3-4-3, two really good passes in the middle, wing backs getting high, solid at the back, don't concede many goals. You didn't see any of these signs with Nunes, so I can only assume that that's kind of not the reason, but it's kind of contributed towards his sacking. Maybe it's unfair on one side, but you could also understand maybe on another hand due to results and maybe just like I said before, they're not seeing the vision coming through from him. So
no, and I feel like what really does bother me as well is that Nuno at Wolves, I was surprised that he was going in the first place. I didn't feel like, although they come off the back of a slightly poorer season compared to the last 2, I don't think it was a bad season. I still think it was fairly comfortable. It was just one where they probably didn't make the right signings, unfortunately, in the end. But again, that was harsh. But then Nuno still came out of it sort of in a positive light because he'd done a lot of good things at Wolves. But there was a respect there between him and the players. He was highly revered, and he looked like a great manager, but also a man manager, which is why it surprises me that the players seem so against him. And I feel like a lot of the time when managers get sacked, that if they start calling out players before that, then that does normally lead to a sacking. It's rare it can work in your favour, because unfortunately, you know, calling out your players, you would be pissed off as a player sometimes, but sometimes I feel like that needs to happen. Like if you've been given enough chances, then you know your punishment is in the media. You'll get some stick, and unfortunately they just haven't responded in the right way, and it has backfired on Nuno. But I do think he's right. I do think there's a lack of respect and commitment in that Spurs squad, and there are players that I'm not saying this isn't directed at Harry Kane, by the way, that think they're bigger than Spurs. And I don't think Harry Kane sits there and goes, "Oh, I'm bigger than Spurs. I want to go to Man City." No, I don't think it's that sort of case at all. I just think he's frustrated because his career is just in a stalemate. I do feel like this sort of transitions nicely onto the Harry Kane situation. He clearly hasn't performed to any real high standard since the summer transfer window. And I do feel like that's aimed more at Levy. I don't feel like it was aimed at Nuno. I do feel like it was very much at Levy, because the longer Harry Kane keeps performing to this low standard, the more his price tag goes down and it backfires on Levy. And so he should. So he should, because Harry Kane has been a phenomenal servant to Spurs. Phenomenal. And I mean, he made his 350th appearance against Man United. That says enough, like right there. But to starve him of success in his football career is, you're not going to want to play for a club owned by a man like that wants to halt your career. And a lot of owners are, you look at lower leagues like Accrington Stanley, their owner, he always wants players to move on because, yeah, he can make money that helps run the club, but he wants to see them succeed in their careers. And Dan Levy isn't that man. He's just a businessman. He's not a football man at all. And that does shine through. And he will pay the price if Harry Kane keeps playing this way. But yeah, I do feel sorry for Harry Kane. What are your thoughts on the situation with Harry Kane at the moment?
Yeah, I am. I agree with pretty much everything you've said there, but you don't know what's going on in his head at the minute. I don't know if it's, yeah, like you said. I think kind of his animosity is aimed at Levy, although I don't think he'd ever let that affect his game and affect the team. So I just don't think that's his mentality. I don't think that's the kind of player that he is, or person even, that he disrespect the manager. We all know how much the players loved Pochettino when he was there. Maybe not so much Mourinho, but it never stopped anyone playing for him. Do you know what I mean? So it's a weird situation. He's definitely not started. He wasn't even really on fire until the Germany game, really, in the summer, was he? So he had a slow start to the Euros as well. Maybe that had something to do with his with the transfer saga that was going on as well. So it's hard to say what the exact underlying causes are, but I do agree with you. The management of Levy of this situation hasn't been great from an outside perspective anyway. I'm sure Spurs fans would probably agree though. And yeah, if your players aren't happy, then that Spurs is captain as well, right? That kind of carries over to the rest of the squad in a way. Like when the talisman's not playing well, when he's the man that you're relying on to win your games almost. Don't get me wrong, you can't go through a season just relying on a player to win you every game. But it's kind of, I guess, sucks the confidence out of the rest of the squad as well. And I guess that might have been an underlying.
He's their captain. A captain has to lead by example, and he's not. So
I think it is form related as well. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah,
I don't know whether style of the play might have halted him as well. But
possibly, yeah, definitely.
I don't know. It's hard to say. Like I said, it's hard to say the exact underlying causes. But I guess with Spurs, it's just looking into the future now. What's happened has happened, and if they get Conte, then hopefully they bounce back.
Exactly. Harry Kane, 1 goal in 8 appearances and 0 assists in the Premier League. It just doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right. He should be, realistically, at his age, he should be coming into his prime, and he's not.
Him and Salah were battling for the Golden Boot last season, right? And Kane did win it on the final day, if I'm not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got 1 goal in 8 appearances now, and Mo Salah has got 10 already in 10 in 10.
Exactly.
Don't get me wrong. Liverpool are at a different place compared to Spurs, obviously, but it just shows what kind of a drop off that he's had, because that's the players that he was among before.
Precisely. It's not like the group has changed much. Like he was still getting the same amount. He's still getting a high amount of goals in that current batch of players. So you have to ask yourself what's gone wrong. I know they've had a couple of injuries, granted, but everyone seems to be coming back to full fitness now. So what's changed is the real question. So moving on from Harry Kane, possible managerial candidates. It has obviously been said that Conte is in London and they've offered him an 18-month deal, which I don't think is a massive selling point, to be honest. I would only be attracted by a lengthy contract, and for a man like Conte, you should be convincing him, not offering, oh yeah, here's a year and 6 months. That'll do, won't it? No, it won't do. Should be more than that. They might just be trying to save money, but hey ho. But I do feel like Conte could really turn them around. It'd be a great appointment. What are your thoughts on Conte?
Yeah, Conte can step Spurs up levels. He can make them a top 4 team, even with their current squad. Maybe not. But, But he's got that experience in the field now of even winning titles in the Premier League with Chelsea. That he knows what he wants, even in the transfer market. Don't get it wrong, managers don't run the transfer system. That's obviously run by your chief executives and your chiefs of football and whatever they're called. But and obviously the chairman and the owner as well. But an 18-month contract for a proven winner in Serie A as well, right? And in any other divisions, I can't remember. But for a proven winner,
obviously the Premier League. So
yeah, and the Premier League with Chelsea. But to see a proven winner given an 18-month contract, it's not for a manager like that. You want to be giving him at least 3-4 years. That's what 8 transfer windows to get his players in. They've got money, Spurs, especially if they sell some of their prize assets that, let's face it, aren't performing. Kane's probably going to go as well. It's a weird one to look at. There's obviously going to be a reason behind it, but it's hard for us to look from Levy's kind of perspective there. It's a weird one, but I think he could be massive for Spurs if they give him the right deal and back him, because he will make them. He's not going to make them a title-winning team overnight. Don't get me wrong. It's not like the Newcastle owners coming in and buying Mbappe. That's not how football works. As a Derby fan, I know that, but like I said, you want to back him with a kind of a big project, sell it to him, like you said, and that's not a great start in my opinion. But who knows? We'll have to see how it develops over the next few days.
Well, I mean, we've seen what happens when the going gets tough with Conte. He left Inter when they had no money. They told him, "Oh, okay, we're going to have to sell some players because we can't afford it." And Conte's furious, so he leaves. If you can't show him as a club what you can offer him, then of course he's going to go. Like that, he's already proven that that's the kind of manager he is. So we'll have to see, but I do feel like it's likely Conte will be their man. Okay, so that's all on Spurs. Let's get on to the Championship, the best league in the world. Let's be honest. We'll start off with Barnsley, probably the freshest news coming out of the Sky Bet Championship at the moment. And that is Marcus Schopf, unsurprisingly, has been sacked. No win in 13 games. I think at least 8 or 9 of them are losses. They weren't really scoring many goals either. It's just not good enough. It's not good enough. And what seemed like on paper a promising manager to bring in and replace Ismail, it just hasn't gone that way, unfortunately. They've sort of gone third time lucky, or tried to go third time lucky with one of those Austrian or German managers they seem to search for. I can't even remember the bold guy's name they had before Ismail.
Struber.
Yeah, Struber, Gerhard Struber, that was it. I've completely forgot his name. But yeah, and then Valerian Ismail, unfortunately for Marcus Schopf, it just hasn't worked out yet. Well, I say yet, but it hasn't worked out and it won't work out. But thing is, at the end of the day, you look at that squad on paper, I've never honestly thought that Barnsley squad on paper is anything special. There's just 1 or 2 individuals on there. I don't think it's a bad squad. I just don't. They massively overachieved last season, and that's down to the manager they had, really. And I don't know what else to say. But then again, you look at Valerian Ismail at the moment, I don't think he's one of the best managers in the league at the moment. I think he's really struggling at West Brom and underachieving. But I think he definitely needs a January window to replace some fodder in the squad. But that's a topic for another podcast. Anyway, Brandon, what was your thoughts on Schopf being sacked by Barnsley? Not surprised, I assume?
Nah, not surprised at all. It's if it weren't for Dyer's point deduction, they'd be bottom and pretty comfortably bottom as well. I think they're 4 points or something, 5 points behind Hull. So it's not good. Don't get me wrong. Just like you've kind of mentioned, the squad individuals, it's a very young squad as well. You got to think Cauley Woodrow is the most experienced player in that squad, and he's 24, I believe, and he's a club captain as well. I think that kind of tells you everything. I think Styles might be injured at the minute as well. They obviously lost Mauer in the summer. They've lost. They didn't lose DK. They never had him in the first place. But they couldn't keep hold of Daryl DK, who was obviously a pivotal part to them making that playoff push last year. and Michael Hellick as well, who's kind of one of the other kind of standout name on that team. Not performing as a team. I don't know whether it's manager or just the youth in the squad that's caught up with them, or I don't know. It's hard to say, really, isn't it? But I'm not surprised Barnsley are in this position, to be completely honest. Like I say, massive overachieved last season. You got to think even the year before that they only avoided relegation with 2 minutes left of the season. So not surprised to see him down there. Yeah, there's a lack of quality in the squad, kind of altogether. It's not got exactly a huge budget or even really backing for the manager, really. But don't get me wrong. I think if they were kind of a 16th, 17th kind of place, sort of, where Peterborough are now, or Forest, that kind of area, I don't think that'd be a problem. I think that's kind of where they should be. But ultimately, I've looked through some of the stats from the last game. I obviously haven't watched the game, so it's hard to kind of saying it. But the last kind of 3 games, they've been the better team in all kind of 3 games. So that's what it appears like from the stats anyway. So players may have been fighting. Schopp probably knew that he was under a bit of pressure. But ultimately, when you're not getting results and you should be bottom of the league, not for a points deduction, and however many points they are off safety, it's just not working. It's just as simple as it is, and it's sad to see, but it's just the way it is. And I think Barnsley have just looked for a different route now to kind of maybe get a bounce out of the players, a bounce of results, and they have to do it 2 days before they play us because that's just our luck, isn't it, as Derby County? Because now they're gonna trollop us 3-0 at Barnsley, but it is what it is. I'm not shocked by it at all. Don't know too much about the manager overall. I don't even think I've watched them play against Derby, so it's hard for me to say. But yeah, not surprised by the position of sacking that. I'm not shocked by.
No, I completely agree, mate. I echo your thoughts. It's not a surprise. Like you say, it is a bit of a shame. It's definitely talent in that squad, that's for sure. But they lack experience of being in this situation. You think a lot of those young players last season were just riding that high of, we've got playoffs. Yeah, great. They've not felt this sort of low. And like you say, the best bit they've sort of got for experience-wise is Cauley Woodrow, a striker, who not normally naturally a captain, really.
No.
And he has sort of been in those scraps that Barnsley have been in, but he's still a young lad himself. They need to get some experience in that squad because I can only foresee a tough season ahead for them now. And I don't see it getting any easier at all whatsoever.
I think even with a change of manager, I think they're going to go down.
So do I.
On what I've seen so far.
Honestly, but then we all thought this last time out, and then they brought Struber in, and then they stayed up. So
they're going to beat us now that I've said that, aren't they?
I'm not going to rule Barnsley out. That's for sure. I'm not going to rule them out because they have that bounce back ability in there, and there's so much potential among that squad. But they could lose players in January, and if they do lose players like Woodrow or Hellick, then it's bleak.
They kept hold of them in the first place, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll have to see, but things aren't looking great at Barnsley right now, that's for sure. And there is always that one team, unfortunately, that just starts badly and ends badly. And like you said, they would be bottom if Derby hadn't had the points deduction. Derby so far, they've surprised a lot of people, and I'm looking forward to chatting about that in a few minutes. But before we do come on to Derby, let's talk about Cardiff. What's occurring? Mick's gone, lots of poor performances, club records, 7 losses in a row, almost 8 losses at Stoke, and then they pull off this amazing comeback under interim boss Steve Morrison, the Millwall legend. What were your thoughts? Have you seen the highlights for that game yourself, or not? If you haven't,
no, I haven't. I haven't.
Highly recommend. It's a great game.
I have been I have been kind of meaning to watch it, to be fair, but Yeah, like you said, Mick going. It's sad because I love a bit of Mick McCarthy.
I know how much you love me.
um, but yeah, it just wasn't working. It's just, sometimes it kind of happens. You would have thought him and that squad are kind of made for each other, especially after they kind of slapped us 4-0 at the Cardiff City Stadium last season. But yeah, ultimately, like I said, not shocked. And it's just on to the next now. It's relentless. The Championship. You can't be messing around with replacing managers and stuff. So obviously Steve Morison took temporary charge. I think them being 3-0 down wasn't a shock to me at all. Although, to be honest, I've watched Stoke play at our place this season. I wasn't that impressed. I don't know whether that was just us or them. But
I think Stoke have definitely overachieved this season, and I do think it's going to come back to bite them at some point.
I think they have, yeah, probably. But yeah, Steve's took charge, and I think what he's just done is he's just given them the lease. He's like, there's good players in that squad. He's just given them a bit of freedom, a bit of lease. Go on, play to impress, and they've pulled off a comeback. Did they not score 3 in just a few minutes as well? Like,
yes.
Very quick fire.
All it took was one goal. All it took was one goal from a very promising youngster in Ruben Colwill. Exciting player. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can bring. I honestly think he could be a Premier League player at some stage in the next couple of seasons.
I'm a big fan of a lot of the players they've got in that squad. I'm a big fan of Perry Ng. I'm a big fan of Ryan Giles.
Yeah, but then again, it's similar to Barnsley. Although these are quality youngsters, it's such a young team. Such a young team.
You've got some good experience mixed in with there, though. That's the difference.
That's probably the difference.
Yeah, I think that's genuinely what it is, and they've got a talisman who's bagging in goals. They're not missing their Daryl Dike. You know what I mean? And they got a good goal. They got a good goalkeeper as well. And like you say, Ruben Colwill's been on fire this season as well. Won them that game at Forest, which obviously I was ballistic about. But yeah, it's interesting what happens. I can't see Steve Morison getting a full-time job, but it'd be very interesting. I haven't given much thought to who they might replace Mick with, but it'll be an interesting search whether they decide to go down a different route or kind of stick to the same kind of slightly direct physical style. We'll have to see. I don't know who's available for that, but yeah, it'd be an interesting one to see.
Definitely. I think with Cardiff, I feel like they should give Steve Morison a chance because he's shown signs of promise with his first game. At least give him 2 or 3 games, see how he goes. Obviously, it's his first managerial job in a sense. So we'll see how he gets on. But so far, it's not a bad start. Not a bad start at all. Definitely will have been a roller coaster of emotions for him. But those are the sort of games that make you want to be a manager. So I do feel like he'll be determined after that. Because, you go 3-0 down, you don't expect to come back and score 3. And they have. And he's going to be buzzing that his team been able to come back like that because that's exactly what Cardiff haven't been able to do under Mick McCarthy. They haven't been able to bounce back. But there they have against an informed Stoke who don't play nice football, but they get the job done usually. And on this occasion, they haven't. Do I think, obviously, Chris Wilder's the favourite to replace Mick McCarthy? Do I think Chris Wilder is going to go to Cardiff? I know the reason why he's favourite because he was at a Cardiff game a couple of weeks ago. But can I see him going there? No, not really. But if they did get him, then fair play because it'd be a fantastic appointment. I still don't think it'd work out though. I don't know why. It just doesn't feel right. But for me, Cardiff, I think they should be looking at a young, promising manager. Obviously, Flynn has just left Newport. Welsh lad, knows what the football culture is like around there, and he's deserved a chance at a higher level for a while now. He's been overachieving at Newport for some time, so I'd like to see a manager like that given a go, but it probably won't happen. Who do you think would be a perfect fit for Cardiff?
Just off the cuff, I don't know about perfect, but just off the cuff. This is only because I've watched their team play 4 or 5 times this season, but I actually quite like the compensation fee is already in a job, but I actually really like the sign of Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. I know he's had a job at this level before, but I just think having watched Burton this season quite a few times, obviously we have done on Adam's vlog, bit of a messy one, but I think what Jimmy likes to do with that team is don't get me wrong, Burton, small pitch, small ground, tight, fans tightly packed to the pitch, so on. But it's not always he's not trying to play pretty football or anything. There's a bit of directness in there, but I think a lot of what Jimmy tries with that team, at least from what I've seen anyway, is he likes to put teams really under pressure, especially at home. And this season they've done better against the better opposition than they have the worse ones. Obviously they played really well against Sunderland, I think it's safe to say. But I went to go and watch them. Well, we went to go and watch them against was it Gillingham, and they struggled a bit. So it's a weird one to look at. But the top kind of half in the League One's really close at the minute, so it's hard to judge. But I think it might be me being biased, but I think him in the Championship with Cardiff actually be a really fun watch, because I think they put, with the players they've got in their squad, I think they could put a lot of teams under a lot of pressure and maybe make some of them crack. Who knows? But
I definitely agree with you there. It will be a fun
outside shout.
Yeah, an outside shout for sure. But I do think they should be looking at more of a manager like Ryan Lowe at Plymouth. I've always liked Ryan Lowe as a manager. When Blue sacked Karanka, I literally said on like 2 or 3 podcasts, I think we should look at Ryan Lowe. I think he did a fantastic job at Bury. And then obviously went on and has done a really good job at Plymouth and is relishing it there now. One of the younger managers of the game and plays nice football, and it's promising. I'd love it if Plymouth got promoted. Don't get me wrong, it's a very lengthy away day. A long one to travel to, but I'd be so for it. Because obviously they've done their stadium up recently as well, so that makes it all the more exciting. And funnily enough, the only other place in the country where you might find an Oxland that I'm not blood related to is Plymouth. So there you go. Fun fact for you. But anywho, we'll get moving on. Let's talk about Derby. I know you'll be keen to have a little bit of a say on them, because there is a bit of a midfield debacle at the moment. However, you've just come off the back of a loss at home, your first of the season, in fact. Unfortunate that it was at the hands of Ben Brereton Diaz. Obviously, it looked like he gave the Derby fans a little bit of stick as well when he scored. But, that's football, being a Forest lad and whatnot. But I feel like Derby, you look at it on paper, they don't have the deduction. Although you're still very low down the table, you're not in the bottom 3. I think you'd be 20th or 21st if you didn't have a point deduction, and Cardiff would actually go into the relegation zone instead. So I feel like that's interesting, considering everyone pitted you to go down. And I don't even feel like that's just because of a points deduction looming. I do feel like that was because your squad looked so thin. So no, Rooney's done an all right job. You've overachieved, been very solid at home, hard to beat. But you do seem to be slipping off a tiny bit recently. However, the point at Cov was a good point on paper. So before we get into the player side of things and that sort of debacle, what is your overall feeling about Derby's recent performances and where you are in the table, in a sense, without the points deduction? Obviously, you've appealed that, and if you win the appeal, then fantastic.
Yeah, I would have said up to Cov, I was really happy, really satisfied with it, to be fair. A lot of draws, but it's better. At least we're getting points on the board. We're not going gung-ho and then losing games, because that's what we've done before. So I was pretty happy up until Cov. Cov, as much as it was a good point, it was a really drab first half. Usually we start games well and then kind of tail off. It's the last 2 games has been completely the opposite. The second half against Cov, to be honest, we were miles the better team, but the first half they were miles the better team. Story of 2 halves completely. But to be honest, I can't remember, because certain things happen during the day. But Blackburn.
I am wearing shorts, by the way. Just in case you all saw my legs, I just wanted to cross my legs, to be honest. So there you go.
Not naked. Blackburn game really the second half was okay. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't worthy of getting a draw, but the first half was really concerning. I don't know whether it was something to do with Blackburn or whether it was something to do with us. I'll be honest, Blackburn I think have been the best team we've played this season. I'll be completely honest. That game and the game against you were the only really two worrying performances I'd say of the season.
Blackburn always seem to do well at Pride Park, though. To be fair,
I'll be honest, Blackburn are a bit of a bogey team for us. Every team has one. I would say they're ours, but we never seem to beat them, even at their place, to be honest. But yeah, really struggling in the first half. They had too much energy. They were winning every second ball, even every first ball. We just couldn't handle them. They had too much energy. Ben Brereton obviously scored 2 goals, ripped us apart. Sam Gallagher, we couldn't deal with him. Tyrese Dolan couldn't deal with him. Even the fullbacks, I can't remember the geezer's name. Bell, I think.
Amari Bell and Ryan Bell.
It was Buckley that played right back, I think.
Buckley, yeah.
John Buckley. And I was really impressed with him as well. Bit of a dive later on in the game, but we'll ignore that. But
Amari Bell, by the way, he was part of the Birmingham City Academy and we let him go.
Really? He looks really good, to be fair. He does.
Yeah, he's done well at Blackburn. Yes.
Yeah.
Ainsley.
Yeah. Obviously, Lenihan was a rock at the back. Bradley Johnson in midfield just ran it. We couldn't get near Blackburn in the first half. And like I said, I think they were the best team that we played this season. But yeah, it's concerning that the last 2 games, the performances have dropped off compared to what they were before, because we were controlling games before that, and we haven't done that for the last 2. But I'm hoping it's just a bit of a patch of form that's probably just dipped a little bit. A couple of players maybe. Curtis Davis actually came out after the game and maybe had a couple of poor training sessions, which isn't promising. I think that's more aimed at the players and the management. But someone like Ravel Morrison has been receiving a lot of criticism recently. Isn't
that the same old story for Ravel though? Every time.
To be fair, this has been the first time Ravel Morrison has played over 10 league games since like United days. So it is quite mental, at least in England anyway. But yeah, it feels like I feel like he has to be dropped. Dive fans might not agree with me, but he is receiving a lot of criticism because even against Blackburn, he was dropping deeper than the 2 holding midfielders, and he's meant to be a 10, high up the pitch, supporting the boys up front, helping to create chances, and he wasn't doing that. I don't know if that's part of the game plan or not, but it feels like he's been doing that a lot this season, at least from my perspective. So I don't think he's been having enough impact on the games. So I think that might be one player that kind of falls into that bracket that Kurt was talking about in the post-match interview. So it's a hard one to kind of assess, really. But yeah, until Coventry, I was really surprised with how we played up to them.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. You look at it on paper, you've overachieved. Realistically, you keep playing the way you're playing. There's no reason why you can't stay up. If you do get an extra points deduction for FFP, I feel like that's the nail in the coffin. Hello, League One. But I do feel like it would be a real shame because you have battled. It's not been pretty, but you've battled, and it would be a shame if you do go down this season down to the points deduction, because you are better than at least 5 or 6 of the teams in this division at the moment. For me personally,
I think if we went for the points deduction and we had a squad that wasn't this thin and had this many youngsters, and we're carrying players as well. People like, I don't like calling players out really, but I'm going to give you some stats here. Joswiak, for example. I know you're not the biggest.
I have never liked Joswiak ever.
He has played 50. He has had 50. I saw this a tweet. I think it was someone called Reese on Twitter. He's had 52 appearances for Derby now. He's scored 1 goal and got 2 assists.
Ouch. For the amount you've paid, that's disgusting.
I think it was 4 million we paid for him from Warsaw, and he didn't look that bad at Warsaw. He had a decent goal involvement record, but I don't know whether it's the physicality side of it or the style of play, but it's just not transferred into Derby's team. So we're carrying players as well as the youngsters as well. If we had a better squad, a squad that wasn't kind of affected by the embargo and obviously all the off-field issues, I think we could easily push top 12, the top half. So
yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't. There's some players
I
in
would
there.
never have said that from the performances last season. Just from this season.
Yeah, I think you're a better side than you were last season. Like, oddly,
100%, and I don't understand why.
it doesn't make sense, but you are.
You remember when Bielik was fit, we were in the top 3 teams in terms of form for a couple of months, weren't we? So
yeah, I mean, you battered us. That was when you were like in prime of that form. But then things just went sour out of nowhere, and a lot of that was down to Bielik being injured. So Bielik being back in the side, obviously he's almost recovered from injury now. Has to come back in for me. Has to. And he's better than any other the midfielders that you have there. And he has to come out, but he also brings goals to the game as well. And, you know, if you're saying what you say about Ravel, although, don't get me wrong, Bielik is not going in the number 10. No way, Jose.
Imagine
Bloody hell, that'd be so weird. You know, he does play that sort of holding midfielder role, and you need to put him in there, either partner him with Shinnie or putting him a little bit deeper than that. But from set pieces, is a real threat, and he can get forward when he wants to. Shinnie shouldn't lose his place. Bird shouldn't lose his place. Ravel should lose his place. And to me, that sort of feels like you could build sort of a 4-3-3 there, to be honest. But then it's Joswiak performing.
Yeah, see, this is the kind of dilemma we're in at the minute. Shinnie's suspended, by the way, because he got his 5th yellow card against Blackburn. So he's not going to be fit anyway. Bielik's not fit anyway, so it'll probably just be Jason Knight kind of dropping in with Max Bird, which is inexperienced at Sinus. But I think, Shinnie, like I kind of messaged you about this, haven't I? Shinnie and Bird have been probably our 2 best players this season. You know, man for man, they've been brilliant. Bird on the ball. Last season, I was very critical of Max Bird. Or was it the season before? No. Sorry, it was last season. Very critical of him. He wasn't performing up to his standard that we saw the season before when he first kind of made his emergence into the first team. But he looks like a new player from last season. He's obviously learned a lot, and I think Rooney's got to take a lot of credit for that. Don't get me wrong, and other management staff, Justin Walker, you know, Liam Rossini. But I think the only way you can fit kind of these players in is if you kind of play a 4-3-3, which is going away from the way we've played this season so far. We've obviously played.
In fairness, of course, it's going away from the way you played this season, but 4-3-3 has always been the Derby way. Always.
It has. But what I'm worrying about is what we've got wide. And that midfield problem. That midfield trio, you look at balance maybe being a problem there, whether you can fit all 3 in at once. I think what you'd probably have to do is play Bird a little bit deeper, and then Shinnie and Bielik either side. I think that's because Bielik's got a bit of energy, to be fair. Bird isn't a runner in his defence. Shinnie not as much of a runner either, but probably more of a runner than Bird. You know, he's going to run rat about a bit. So I think if you play kind of Bird in the middle, he's going to get on the ball and probably be his most effective self. So it's kind of what you do out wide. I think at this kind of stage, Sibley's not been performing up to the standard. I don't want.
He can play out wide though.
Sibley. I don't think he's been that impressive. I think his best position is in the number 10. And you've got to give him a few games to get into it.
Yeah, definitely. But for me, watching Sibley as an outsider, it just feels like every game he's just trying too hard.
Maybe.
In a sense, not trying too hard as in effort wise. I mean, at least every single Derby highlights video I watch, Sibley has fired at least 2 or 3 shots over the bar. It feels like he's constantly trying to score a worldie and get himself back into the form of his life, get himself into goals. That's not always the way to become an informed player. I know that's the way it worked for him before, but I do feel like, you know, he is trying too hard to score that spectacular. He just needs to build a level of consistency and be a team player. Like, that's not saying he's not committed to the Derby team or whatsoever, because he is, but I just feel like he's playing his own game a bit too much sometimes for what I see, and does need to try and develop more of a chemistry. But other than Sibley, my other question for you is, as a Derby fan, you've got three strikers realistically. If you were to play a 4-3-3 just to accommodate the midfield, which although it's unlikely, don't get me wrong, I'm sure Rooney will stick to his system. If you did, who's going to be that central striker? Because for me, CKR, I don't think he'd be a good central striker. I feel like he needs a partner. Whereas Jack Stretton has missed so many big chances this season, so many, when he has appeared, that I feel like Sam Baldock is the only logical option in that sort of lone striker role. But even then, he's hardly hit the ground running. If anything, he's underperformed more than the other two. So I don't know. It's difficult because you're trying to accommodate these fantastic midfielders that you have, but then you can't accommodate the attack. So what do you do? What do you do?
Yeah, for me, I echo your point about Stretton. It's easy to run into Jack Stretton around my end, so I don't want to get chinned. But I'm a big fan of him, and I'm a massive fan of Sibley as well. By the way, you obviously know that. I don't want to get chinned by him either. But it's hard to say Stretton can run himself in a 4-3-3 on his own. He's not physical enough for that. I don't think that's his game either. Don't get me wrong, you will be surprised how much he receives the ball when he's back to goal. Which is
Stretton won't keep you in this division though. I feel like the Forest game is a prime example of the big chances. You missed 2 sitters in that game. 2 sitters.
To be fair, one of the sitters was actually blocked really well. But
yeah, true.
you can't actually see it did actually go out for a corner. But yeah, I don't think it's fair to rely on Jack in our situation. He's a player you want to bleed into the team, really. Maybe bring him on when we're winning games and we're not in that situation.
Well, he's only 20 years old, so we can hardly carry a front line.
Exactly. He's not always been the most blessed finisher, don't get me wrong, but he's working hard, and to be fair, I think in a few years' time he can turn into a good player. I'm confident in saying that. I've seen enough from him. I think there's some aspects of the game he needs to improve, and I think a loan spell is probably the best for that. He only got recalled last season from a loan spell because we had no strikers.
Well, he was fantastic in the National League. He was fantastic. He suited the league to a T. But I've really wanted Stretton to go down to League 2 or League 1.
Yeah, I think that's what he needs to do. I think he needs to play games, and he's not going to play them at Derby. But moving on from Stretton anyway, Baldock, no, not having it whatsoever. I don't hate him, by the way.
This is definitely indirect.
No, he runs a lot for the team. I respect him. He's made a decent career in the Championship, hasn't he? Scoring goals with the likes of I think Brighton's the one that kind of sticks out the most. But
Reading.
and Reading, yeah, sorry as well. But yeah, in a 4-3-3, no, not for me. And I think you'll be surprised. I don't think he impacts it enough from the start. We've seen him from the start. I think he's more of, you win in a game, you want someone to run the channels for the last 20 minutes, you bring Baldock on, or if you just want 2 strikers. But no, I think Colin has to run the line for me. I know what you mean and what you're trying to say, but
he is the best finisher, to be fair, Colin.
He's the best finisher, but he has improved. I don't know if it's just games that you've seen him where maybe he's not, well, the points that you're picking out.
I just don't think he'd be mobile enough in a 4-3-3. I think he'd be too isolated. It'd be too easy to isolate him.
I think he's more than you think, I think he changed the game against Blackburn. I'm not going to lie. He's a bit like Akinfenwa in the way he can just pin 2 centre-backs.
Well, he was unlucky not to score at Cov. A fantastic, instinctive first-time shot, by the way.
Post against Blackburn as well. Pretty much exactly the same thing as what happened at Cov. But yeah, I think Colin has to run the line for me. Obviously, you want prime Chris Martin, but it's not going to be a thing, is it? So Colin runs the line for me, and I love Colin. He's brilliant for the dressing room. He's brilliant for the young lads. He epitomises exactly what Derby fans want in a player that plays for our club. So I think he runs the line, but like I said, he runs the line. But like I said, the wide options is what concerns me. I think Burns pretty settled, in that right back position. I would love Festi to play many games, but if I had to pick between the two of them to play at right back, I'd play Nathan. But yeah, we've seen Festi and Nathan in the same team, both down the right hand channel. It just doesn't seem to work. So whether you play him on the left kind of maybe on the left of a 4-3-3. I don't know, or maybe you try and kind of mold him into that right-sided attacker. But it's hard for me to say that. That's kind of down to the coaching staff. But I think Fest is kind of the most promising player we've got at the minute. Let's face it. But yeah, wide options, like I said, Sibley, Joswiak. It's not Sibley. To be fair to Sibley, he's not actually played in the number 10 once this season, except for in the cup against Sheffield United, and he scored in that game. So it depends which way you look at
Maybe
it.
Sibley needs a move. I think you get good money for Sibley.
I don't. Maybe it depends what our financial situation is, but honestly, I think the best two options to maybe play wide. Then you're looking at Festi, Sibley, if you can do a job, but Nighty as well. He's really underrated out on the right hand side. So
yeah,
these are all options, but I can't actually see him moving to a 4-3-3. To be honest, I think it leaves us too vulnerable.
of course, yeah, definitely. I think before we wrap up on Derby, because we have definitely spent a fair bit of time on Derby, the ownership is a quick thing I wanted to touch on. Obviously, a potential new owner was at the game the other day. I've seen he's been a bit lively on Twitter as well, which it can always be exciting for a Derby fan, I imagine. Seems positive, but it's a PR thing. Anywho, but it could be a promising right step in the right direction. However,
yeah, go on.
If you're still under administration, you are going to look to sell assets to make money, because that's the whole point of administration. Administrators come in to balance the books and make money. So you might see one player depart for a fair fee, and it'd be a question of which player that would be. Because you might need to, you just might need to in general, unless there's a takeover before then, which doesn't look too far off. But we've seen characters that have been excited on social media about buying Derby before, and that didn't go too well.
That's what I was going to reference. After Eric Alonso in his interactions on Twitter and Instagram, I don't like it. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but I just don't like it. It just scares me because I just know he's going to say something and then we're going to lose to Forest and it's just going to all backfire.
I love how you pick out Forest there.
Apparently, I haven't seen this, but apparently he tweeted something about Forest already. So I'm not. I'm just,
oh no.
Already. Apparently, Kurt, I can't really say his name. I'm just going to call him Chris because I'm pretty sure that's his first name. I'm pretty sure Chris is only something like second or third in the pecking order to even take over the club. So it's a weird one which way we look at it, but
he's clearly using social media as a way to get in there. Then that does sound like
maybe so. And the fans seem like his statement was very good. I don't know if you read it, but his statement was very good, worth a read. But yeah, in terms of selling assets, I don't know whether it's going to happen. We'll have to see. Administrators have said that they're pretty sure it might be all right. I don't know. I might be misquoting, but
that's the thing though. That's why I only said one might have to go, just one.
Maybe it might have to be the case, but look, the season so far it's been better than we expected. Dropped off last couple of games, like we mentioned, but I think we've definitely got it. Especially if we survive the second deduction, we've definitely got it in us to stay up.
Oh, of course, yeah. But you definitely need to bring in some decent players in January, which will be tough because the budget's
and let some go. Of
course, yeah, definitely. To be honest, if you wanted to sell an asset, Joswiak's the asset.
So we won't make the money back, unfortunately.
Oh, of course not. But if you could at least scrap 2 mil of that, then that wouldn't be bad. Even that's a stretch, but we'll see.
I think that is a stretch.
1 million isn't out of the ordinary, though, to be honest. Just before we quickly hop on to League One briefly, I just wanted to touch on my team, Birmingham City. No win in 7, no goals in 6. Things were looking bleak, but it wasn't for the will of trying. We were one of the biggest chance creating teams in the division, but we also missed the most big chances in the division. So the creativity was there, everything was right, it just wasn't clicking. And now, since the turnaround, 4 clean sheets in the last 4 games, and we've won our last two. We beat an informed Swansea and an informed Middlesbrough because the goals are finally going in that we deserved. So, yeah, we had a rough patch, but every team hits a rough patch every season. It's natural. It's football. That's what it's all about. So I do feel like now we could sort of kick on a bit. I'm not saying we're going to go on this mad run and get to the playoffs, but I do feel like we're going to sort of get to where I expect us to be this season, which is sort of just outside the top 10, but constantly pushing it, which I think is fair. And, I'd be happy with that sort of a season, but we're definitely on the right pathway right now. Just before we quickly talk about League One briefly, what are your thoughts on Blues recently and what you've seen results wise?
Yeah, I honestly, from an outside perspective, I didn't think it was as bad as you were making it out to be, but obviously it was, because you just rattled some of the stats through for me. But yeah, really positive last two games by the sounds of it. Apparently Borough away was a bit of a Madden as well.
Yes,
bit of a mad one. Madden, that's what I've heard anyway. I'm not going to say anything, but yeah, I'm happy to see, especially you and the Blues fans, with smiles back on your faces and getting what I think you deserve by the sounds of it, by the way you've been playing. And I think that your form lately hasn't been reflective of what your squad is capable of, or what your manager is capable of, or where you should be. So I'm happy for that aspect.
100%. I mean, I feel like one of the big changes, although some fans are taking it a bit too literal, in my opinion, is the dropping of Harlee Dean. Yes, we have improved since we dropped the club captain, Harlee Dean, and that's been evident for everybody to see. However, I don't believe it's as deep rooted as some might think. I still believe Harlee Dean wants what's best for the club and always will. And yeah, like I just believe that we've got a better bond in defence at the moment. And, not every player will fit every system, and that's sort of the case for Harlee Dean. He just doesn't fit your system.
Harlee Dean is as vocal as he seems to be. I think he's one of those leaders that it can be really good when you're winning, but it can also affect the squad and make it even worse when you're not winning games.
When you lose it. Well, that's exactly what David Stockdale said on a podcast literally a day ago, that Harlee Dean is a fantastic captain when you're winning, but when you're losing, his attitude is quite poor and it rubs off on everybody else.
And that's what I'm seeing from an outside perspective. So to hear that from someone who's relatively close to Birmingham, then it speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Exactly. And I mean, since Deeney's been made captain, 2 wins in 2, he's been a phenomenal captain, and I hope he keeps that armband. And Deeney's finally finding form himself, to be fair, since he joined, because he joined after the Derby game and then we couldn't win. So it sort of looked bad on him in a sense, but it really wasn't that deep. But now he's been made captain. He's been phenomenal. Not just, obviously the goals haven't exactly been flowing, but he can pass a ball, I tell you. He's been fantastic for some of the other attacking midfielders and also Scott Hogan. He's been providing some good opportunities, and we should still be scoring more than we are, to be honest.
Let's not forget as well, when that season when Watford went up and he was, I don't know if he was the top scorer in the league, but I remember he was the top. Or was it? He was. And I remember that season, did he not get like a mad number of assists as well? Mm-hmm. Like his total goal contribution is one of the highest ever in Championship history, I think.
His vision is unbelievable. He can spot a pass from anywhere.
It is people, I think, forget that almost. And also, you've got to think some of the names he's probably up there with in terms of Championship, in terms of Championship history. But I think, don't get me wrong, age, don't get me wrong, but he's still got that level of class to him. Rooney was aged when he come back to England and played in the Championship with us, but although he probably didn't have as much legs anymore, he was still absolutely class. So,
of course,
speaks volumes.
Definitely. So, before we wrap things up, let's quickly touch on League One. Very, very interesting up at the top at the moment. I think a lot of the names that we expected to be in that top bracket are there. But let's just look at that top 4 quickly. Actually, we'll include the top 5 because I think it's unfair on Sunderland to cross them out. However, on Sunderland, they have just lost 5-1 to a promotion rival, Rotherham, which looks awful. And I've watched the highlights and I did not see anything really from Sunderland at
Well,
all.
we watched them against Burton, didn't we? And to be honest, although you can see there's talent in the squad, it almost feels like for lack of
They
a
were
better word,
naff.
they melted a bit almost, especially in the second half.
Yeah.
Burton just took them by storm.
It was very negative football, that's for sure. That was the vibe we got anyway, for sure. It wasn't what we expected. I think with Sunderland being top of the league at the time when we actually saw them, we expected something more exciting.
I think I remember 2 chances. It was 0-0 at the point, and they had 2 clean through chances on goal against Ben Garrett, and they tried to just dink him and just put your laces through it, son.
Exactly.
I don't know who their striker is, to be honest, but I know McGeady was one of them, and it almost felt.
Oh, McGeady missed a sitter.
Yeah, he did. And what lost Sunderland that game is Burton's will to run and overrun them. That's what lost Sunderland that game.
Of course, yeah. So now, obviously, Sunderland are sat fifth and do have 2 games in hand on top of the table. Plymouth. If they won those 2 games in hand, they would actually go top of the table. However, the teams above them, Wigan, Wycombe, Rotherham, have 1 game in hand on top of the table, Plymouth. And Wigan and Wycombe are 2 points behind Plymouth, so they could easily go top of the table quite comfortably. And Rotherham aren't far away from that bracket. But I think we always expected these teams to certainly be up there. Yeah. Wigan spent a lot of money in the summer under their new owners, bringing in high-profile signings such as Charlie Wyke and Jordan Jones. As for Plymouth have been one of the outsiders, but they have made some shrewd signings, and they've really impressed.
This is a bold shout at this point of the season, 16 games in, at least for Plymouth anyway. But I actually think Plymouth are going to win the league.
So do I.
It's going to. You've mentioned how many teams have got games in hand on them, all the way down to Sunderland. And that, so what's that? 4 teams that can all overtake Plymouth.
But that's extra pressure on those teams.
It's extra pressure. You don't know they're actually going to win these games. League One's a very competitive division. Even Ipswich,
as you'll find out next season.
Oh yeah, as you'll see, Ipswich up until now weren't even in the top half until.
We can clip that when you stay on.
Okay then, thank you. We'll do that. But I think Plymouth have got so much momentum behind them at the minute, and it's really good. It's really good to watch, to be fair.
It is.
Some really good players, really good manager, and it seems to all be clicking perfect time. And I think teams will drop points against Plymouth as well. Maybe in the big 6-pointer games at the top of the table. And I also see teams like Sunderland and Rotherham and Wigan dropping points against lower teams like your Burtons and like your Lincolns and your teams like that. And you got to think, even in this top 5, top 6, you've got no Sheffield Wednesday, you've got no Burton, you've got no Ipswich, you've got no Bolton, you've got no Portsmouth.
Which are all teams that were expected to be up there, especially with Ian Evatt, Bolton manager, going, "Oh, we're the best team in the league." Yeah, that's going well for you, mate.
They were top of the league not long ago, though. It shows how quick it can change.
Exactly, and Ipswich have signed every player under the sun, and they still can't
buy a win. Ipswich have got the best squad in the division. I honestly do,
by a country mile. But that's trying to build a team with players you've all signed at once. It won't work. There's no chemistry. It was very unplanned.
It will click at once. So I will tell you.
It will get there. It will get there.
So much talent in that team. It's a joke.
Well, to be honest, it started to click a bit more recently, but they have just lost to top of the table Plymouth. So, they took a 1-goal lead, and Plymouth showed their bounce back ability, that they can fight, and they will fight. Plymouth are the only team, they've got the least losses in the league. They've lost 1 game all season. Wigan, who are in second, have lost 4 games this season.
But they've won the most games as well, haven't they? Not Wigan?
Yes, Wigan have. One more win than Plymouth.
But they've only drawn 1. So it's a really fun division to watch. I really do love it.
It is fun, but I agree with you on the Plymouth point. I do think they'll win the league. But Wigan and Wycombe are certainly going to give it a run for their money. So will Rotherham, of course. Paul Warner's got promotion experience. So is Gareth Ainsworth. But I think the difference between Wycombe this season and Wycombe the season they got promoted, I think Wycombe this season are a much better outfit than when they got promoted. Far better. And they've looked good value for money. Their football isn't as one-rooted as it was before, which for me, I honestly do think Wycombe will finish second this season. I know it's a bold shout being so close into the season, but if they don't pick up many injuries, I do think Wickham will get there because for me, Wickham probably have the best team spirit in the division, if maybe second best.
Well, you saw that from the fight that they gave until the last day, last season in the Championship.
Of course, yeah. Gareth Ainsworth is a manager you want to play for. Simple as that. He'd be a good fit for Cardiff or Barnsley.
Maybe we'll have to see.
But Barnsley only hire managers in Germany or Austria, so that won't happen.
Yeah, that's true. Gareth Ainsworth doesn't quite fall into the Marcus Shop category.
No, it does not. But you look at some of the other lower teams as well. You got Oxford and MK Dons and Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield Wednesday have a fantastic squad on paper. They should be up there. It did look like sort of start of the season they were going to go on and piss the league, to be honest. But it hasn't worked out that way. So yeah, obviously Sheffield Wednesday, fantastic squad on paper. Looked like they were going to go on and really win the league, but have not. Hi, Molly.
I said come in 10 times.
Hi.
Hello.
Please.
How are you?
Win in 30 seconds.
Okay.
Guess off.
Okay. Committee Norga. Jesus Christ.
So yeah, anyway, Sheffield Wednesday, fantastic squad on paper. Looked like they were going to piss the league, but unfortunately have not. Oxford constantly in and around the playoffs every season. Been really unlucky under Mark Robinson, but I think they'll get there eventually. You never know. This year could be their year. They've shown glimpses. Then MK Dons, that squad on paper is fantastic and is underachieving. But the departure of Russell Martin really halted MK Dons' progress, and they haven't kicked on yet. But the squad is certainly there, that's for sure. But that's it really on League One, to be honest. That's
really
wrapped up.
To see how it goes.
Exactly. 100%. That wraps up a good episode. We will be back again soon, I promise. You never know what could happen. There's plenty of news. Looks like it's round the corner. So as soon as it does come out, we will cover it. But thank you for joining us if you have taken the time, and we'll see you in the next one.